Hello, welcome to Ruminations on Tony's Tall Tales, where stories take the stage. I'm your host, Anthony Pavelich. Thank you for joining us, or joining me, I should say. It's just going to be me tonight. So in our first episode, it's been a little bit. We had a brief introduction about the show, and I probably wanted to provide just a little bit more detail. Not a whole lot of detail, but give a little bit more insight on my background and also share what I hope to impart um, or share with you in this podcast. Um, so essentially, I started many years ago now. At this point, I started in technology during my last year of high school, and I kind of thought that's what my career was going to be. For you know, it just seemed like I kind of moved into an area that I thought was going to be good for me. I'm a very analytical mind, so technology made a lot of sense to me because I had been around it, but also too it just seemed comfortable for how I thought, and how I enjoyed tech, I like gadgets and so forth. Um, so I was in that space for a little bit, and then I actually was laid off and kind of trying to figure out what I want to do after that because where I was at in Arizona at the time there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities, at least at that particular time. A lot of the technology was still just coming in, you know, into its birth. Um, so I actually went to a conservatory or tried to go to a conservatory at the college and basically got some classes in acting. I kind of did a whole 180 because I ended up taking an elective, which ended up being acting 101 and that kind of cemented or at least completely changed my whole perspective and kind of where I wanted to go at that point. So I started doing more acting classes and consumed everything I could, books and um, any sort of material that I could get to try to train and become more proficient at that craft. Um, I then made the decision to move to California because that, is considered the mecca of acting and anything in the film industry or television, and that's I felt that that's where I needed to go to kind of, start pursuing this a little bit more intensely. Very interesting adventures once I've been in California, which is now it's been some time. I think if I'm counting correctly, I'm on my been now in California maybe 16, 17, 18 years, which is kind of incredible when I think about it. I'm getting close to that mark where I've been here just as almost as long as, where I was at before. I was born and raised in Arizona. And obviously I think that was a good time for me to leave and go. But California is a completely different beast. Incredibly grateful for the things that I've been able to do, but also the things I've been able to learn. This place has definitely taught me a lot, forced me to maybe think about some things that I may have been not wanting to think about. um, but what's really interesting is, I did a lot of, commercials. I did so a little bit of television work, film work, a lot of student films, a lot of short films, a lot of theater. So I got to experience a lot of different settings in the creative aspect of acting, um, and I found myself a few years back, kind kind of a little bit burnt out. Maybe life had there were some things that happened in my life that I needed to kind of deal with, but then work through some of my insecurities and some of my just just my mental state, my mental state, my emotional well-being. I needed to kind of, take care of and reset. I just felt kind of burnt out. I'd been jumping from job to job for many years, struggling to make ends meet in a lot of aspects financially. So I just kind of took a break, and I kind of had to reevaluate things, but just more of a breather, just kind of get myself back on track. And then I think that lasted for about a year or two. And then I got the bug again, where in a sense, I kind of felt that creative fire still yearning to create, essentially. I ended up taking a playwriting class, a playwriting intensive at a theater locally here in Los Angeles. And because I started to, for many years, even when I was acting, I would still, there was ideas of things, of scenes, of just images, of ideas that would come up in my mind that I just started, writing down in notebooks and making, little pages and stuff of things that I may eventually, want to see created. And I felt that there was something about the yearning that to do that more and more became a little bit more prevalent. And so I started to try to maybe explore it. And also too was that thing where acting's very difficult in the sense that you rely on a lot of other people to do what you love doing. There's a lot, it's a very collaborative process in the sense that there's so many other people and talents that have to come together to create, whether it be a film, whether it be a theater show, whether it be a television series. There's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of people come together to lend their craft and their talents to create something. And you're kind of beholden sometimes to that. So the idea of creating my own content, or at least being the driver of that content became a lot more in my mind, more prevalent. So I started exploring, like, maybe I should just write something, and then figure out a way to make it. Um, Very small. Maybe in the beginning it was more of like creating, scenes or short films to try to get this process going. So I signed up for this intensive, which seemed really interesting to me, and I'd done other classes with this group before, and so I got in, and it was very very inspiring because it was driven by people that were playwrights, that were writers by trade, that made a living off of it. So it was people that were credible, and it was people that could tell you exactly what goes into it, and also too that had success at it, and that weren't just teaching it from a purely academic standpoint, but that was giving you information that was valuable and also concrete and rooted in real experience. Um, so I really enjoyed it. I found it fascinating, and we, in that class, it was great because we got to workshop a little bit. So we would have to bring in writings of our own or create writings of our own, and actually read them out loud, as nerve-wracking as that could be, and receive feedback, and put great constructive feedback to make it better, and to just give us a more of a sense of how to construct stories and construct um yes, a vision of something that we want to tell as a writer. So very fascinated with that, and it just kind of really opened up more. So I started, going back to the notebooks where I'd collected a lot of these things over the years, and start really trying to craft out, outlines of some of the stories that I wanted to tell. And it's it's been very interesting because as the title of the show episode is called Intention and Obstacles. I'm a very blunt person, I like to think of myself as. And it's a struggle to be a writer, but I also think it's a struggle because of what I've learned about myself as a person, some of my qualities, some of my characteristics that have, to be honest, kept me from being probably more successful than I envision myself being. from a writing standpoint. And I felt like this podcast was a way to almost serve a purpose of holding me accountable, or more accountable than I probably definitely was not keeping myself as much. And also to serve as maybe there's a thing in writing where you kind of want to have a reading of your work because it allows the words to lift off the page. It gives it color. There's something about hearing it auditorily that really gets things kind of moving, but also too it gives it power and it gives it momentum. And I felt that maybe this podcast could serve as that function where I highlight some of my struggles, highlight some of the obstacles that I've dealt with or am continually to deal with, and maybe serve as a way for me to hear it and then allow um, the actions I take to help move past some of these. Um, because I want one of my main goals is to complete something in its totality, whether that be a pilot, whether it be a spec screenplay, whether it be a novel, just some form of these ideas that I've been putting down for years and getting it into a finished product. Um, and that's one of the things that I hope to do with this. Um, so intention and obstacle. I've gravitated to this concept or these words, especially because I feel one, there's a simplicity with their meaning, and they are the foundations of good storytelling. One of the resources that I used recently was the masterclass. Masterclass.com has a wealth of different subjects that you can um, dive into. Essentially, they're online classes that you can learn from some of the best that have done great work in their respective fields. And one of them was Aaron Sorkin, who's an award-winning writer, and he has a class on there that was just there was something about that class that really resonated with me. One of the key tenets he talks about is intention and obstacle. And because this is the foundation. Your character or characters, they want something. Their intention, what is it that they're going after? What is it they need that they cannot live without? They want it really, really, really bad. It's not something that it's just, oh, they would like to have it. No, they have to have it. And that's what drives them to take action to get that want, that intention that they have. And then the obstacle is whatever it is that is in their way that is keeping them from getting what they want. And these are the two main tenets of all great storytelling. And this obstacle needs to be formable. It cannot be something that can be just easily dismissed. It needs to be something that is keeping them from what they want so that they will try to take different actions to overcome that obstacle. And I think it probably resonated with me a lot too, is because I think I've felt that internally. I felt that there's this great thing that I personally want to do, but there's these obstacles that arise, and it could be external, but for me, I think a lot of them were formable internal obstacles that has been keeping me from really arriving to my intention, to my want. So I highly recommend that class. Really good, and what's really cool about that is again, you're getting great information from somebody who has done it, who has gone through the same struggles, who continues even to this day. He talks about struggling to create something from nothing. You are taking a blank page and you are having to create this entire world, these entire characters, these relationships, these. these themes, these actions, and so it's it's the essence of that. It doesn't get easier the process. What gets easier is the ability to try and fail, try and fail, try and fail. And that's what I think I've really gotten the sense from a lot of the resources that I'll talk about and try to bring up, and also too that I've tried to use, is that it's not about, yeah, the process getting easier, but it's about the trying and failing becomes a little bit easier because it's about the process there, and there's no shortcut for the work.
Hey, this is Charlie, Triple C, from Brevity Box, a new and interesting podcast from the Ruminations Radio Network. If you're a fan of podcasts, we have a lot of great content to offer. Come check out our diverse group of podcasts and hosts at ruminationsradionetwork.com.
After all these years that I've been through some of this, and kind of just as a person and as an individual, and learning and trying to grow and become better, there's no shortcuts for the work. And everything that I've learned and picked up and dived into, whether it be a class, whether it be books, whether it be these online resources, uh, you cannot circumvent the process. It has to happen. And no, your process may be different. And that's not to say there is one process to rule them all or that will fit your style, but your process is still going to be your process. And it's still going to have to take time. You're still going to have to struggle through it. There's going to be days when you don't like it, and that's okay. Uh, there has been this little bit of mentality where it's like you have to love what you do, and yeah, you do, and it's admirable. But there's still, even with loving what you do, there's still going to be days where you're just not going to want to do it because you have to get into the minutia of the process. The process isn't enjoyable, and I think that's one of the keys. Is that's what separates the professionals over the amateurs. Is the professionals do the process. They understand that the process is what makes them successful, and they keep showing up because they know if they do the process, the results are going to pay dividends. And that's one of the struggles that I've had to deal with, is that unfortunately, I've come to realize, or at least it's been a struggle to overcome, is that I kind of have fallen into the trap of the pessimistic worldview. And that has, been a detriment to me more times than I can count. And the pessimistic worldview is unfortunately a little bit more negative. It's a little bit more keen to maybe shutter responsibility, to not embrace accountability. Um, Definitely a little bit more negative. Um, Very, very easy to play the victim card, and that everything is happening because of external circumstances and situations. Um, so this has been interesting for me because I'm impatient and I want results quickly. And I that's why I like doing tasks and other items that have tangible results quickly, because I like to have results that I can show, because I'm that type of person who's very analytical, but uh, I'm driven by empirical data. And I like data that can show and that can be presented to prove and provide evidence for something, whether it be, like a job, whether it be perspective, or it can be facts and figures and all this other stuff. And where that has not served me is in, I think, more creative fields, because with technology, it's a lot easier. You're dealing with ones and zeros, but you're dealing with on and off. And with technology, a lot of times technology either works or it doesn't work. So you're getting quicker feedback on, if I'm troubleshooting a system or a process or an application, I can test a lot of things very quickly and get results of those tests faster. And then that way I can use that information to try to find or define a problem, but then quickly identify a solution and implement a solution. And I think that's why I did really well in technology, and I continue to do very well in technology. Um, but there's this creative part of my soul that wants to express itself. And in a creative field, you're not dealing with on and off. You're not dealing with the ones and zeros. You're dealing with a lot of gray. You're dealing with a lot of emotional content. And you're dealing with a lot of processes that take a lot of time to produce something great. You know, films take years to develop. You'll constantly hear directors and producers having they'll have something that took them 10, 20, 30 years to get made. So these are processes that aren't quick, and they take a lot of brewing, a lot of germination. And so I think that's where I've struggled a lot, is that I want the finished product, or I just want to bang it out. And it doesn't happen that way. And what I've learned to notice is that it takes a process, and you cannot circumvent the process. Now, what that involves then too, the second step, the major step to that, I believe, and from what I've gathered from a lot of these successful writers, is that you have to show up. In order to do that process, you need to show up every day, even when you don't want to, even when you're having a block, even when you don't know what's going to happen next, or you got yourself in your character in this hole and you don't know how to dig them out. The days when you feel like nothing is working in your story and you maybe toss the whole thing out and you got to start again from scratch. Or even I heard like a great interview with the writer who had created something, had created at least spent 8 weeks working on a script and working on a treatment, and basically put eight weeks of work into something that was pretty solid, and then working with the director, and then realizing that this story isn't right. And then having to toss that entire 8 weeks of work and start anew. And that is just the reality. Now, some people, some writers can, you know, lock themselves in a room for a week, hours, months, and bang something out. Others might take a little bit longer. Others might do it in different ways. Some writers might do it where they don't do an outline and they just write out in sequential order. Some others might do the cards on the cork board and might write out scenes and might start constructing their story that way. Some writers might do an outline first. They live and die by the outline, and then once they have their outline, then they will write their actual work. But it's all a process. No matter what the process is, the process is the process. And that's, I think, a part of what I'm trying to find. But then also too, the second part of that is showing up every day to do the process. Um, so one of the things that I wanted to highlight, two resources that I'm actually, even at this point, rereading them currently to try to establish just more consistency in my writing. And before I do that, I should probably say, so after going through some of those courses and going through some of these resources, I tried to make a goal for myself. Okay, what is it that I want to focus on and try to get completed? And I came down to, because I've got a lot of ideas. I've got a television show series. In fact, I think two at this point that I want to try to get made. I've got an enormous novel series that I want to create. That's it's for someone like me that is incredibly daunting because currently it's like a 6 book series right now as it stands in the initial stages. And then I've got a full feature play that I want to develop that I have ideas. And again, a lot of these there's I've got maybe scenes written out. I've got notes. Some of them are on different stages. Some of them are just literally just an idea. Some, yeah, have scenes. Some have chapters already made written out. Some are a little bit further along. Um, but none of them are complete, and that's my goal. And then I've got a comic book series that I have ideas for that I want to write, both part of actual characters, like characters that are current, but then also to original IP. Um, and I've got films, yeah. So it's just I've got the whole gamut. So I try to figure out, okay, what should I focus on to try to get just done. And there was a screenplay that I've been trying to finish for about yeah, I would say at least the last year and a half. And so I thought about just focusing on that, just working that out, and then that way it would be something. Because also too, I don't really consider myself a writer officially at this stage because I haven't written anything, I haven't completed anything. And when you're a writer and you introduce yourself as a writer, a lot of people are going to ask, well, what if is there anything that you've done that I've read, or that I've seen, and you want to be able to say yes. You want to be able to also say, this is what I'm working on, this is what I've done. Um, and so, and also too, from the business standpoint, in order to establish yourself as a writer, you have to have written works. Whether it be a manager that you're dealing with, whether it be an agent, whether it's you're pitching it to a studio or a streaming service, you need to have stuff written so that way, if somebody says, okay, if I come and say, oh, I'm a writer, I can show you physical, like tangible content that can demonstrate to you my ability and my skill. And that's why I've tried to really focus on actually completing one thing. I've got all these ideas, but what do I focus on one thing and just get it done? And that's been the screenplay that I've been trying to work on. It's a spec screenplay. I have no intention of. I'm not naive to think that I'll sell it or any of this because it is based off of somebody else's IP, intellectual property. So there isn't really a way to sell it because it's based off of somebody else's characters. And so it's a James Bond script that I've been working on for a while now, and it's just the idea that came up that I found really interesting, that I thought could really take the character in a really cool direction. And I'm a big James Bond fan, so I thought there would be something that I'd be excited about writing, and for the most part, I have. So that has been the focus, and I kind of want to use this platform as to try to help me, almost like a journal, me going through it. Um, I'm just roughly at, I think my last count, I looked at maybe 65 pages. Um, and so I'm, trying to hit that sweet spot of that, the 120. That tends to be the sweet spot for films, for action and adventure. Um, so yeah, so that's my goal. Um, yeah, actually, my page count currently stands at 73, and that I think that might be just a little skewed because I think there's some scenes in that I need to take out and or rework. So the page count could be a little bit under that. So yeah, and I hope to at some point share a little bit more about it once I get closer to finalizing it. But even just like using that as kind of the my real world example of what I've been trying to accomplish, but then also to some of the things that I've struggled to the struggles that I've come up against to try to get done. So there's two resources in this episode that I really wanted to highlight. Is there was a book that I found. I think it's been about a year now, maybe a couple of years ago. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it's a book that he created and wrote. That's essentially it's a comprehensive guide on how to change your habits and get 1% better each day. And I really highly recommend this book. You can find it at jamesclear.com. I'll also put the link in the show notes. But it's a way to build good habits and break old habits. And he does a great job of diving into why we hold on to bad habits to begin with. He lays the foundation of what is a habit, why do we keep doing bad habits over and over, and if we want to instill a new habits, what is the best way to do that? And he does a great way of breaking it down very very excessively. That's what I really liked about the book was that it was just very simple, very clean, very concise, but very actionable too. Like a lot of the stuff that he talks about, you can easily put into practice. You can actually do it. And when I've been consistent on following the tenets in the book, I have found that I've been able to be more diligent. I think I've fallen out because I haven't been consistent on doing the practice. So I think that's why I'm rereading it because I really want to try to be a lot more diligent about putting in the practices that he suggests in place and trying to really get back to a more consistent output. Yeah. So I really highly recommend that book. It's a great read. It's not terribly long either. And also too, I really appreciated his talk about the 1%. That's that's if you can just do 1% each day, you are going to be able to reap the rewards of the gains later on. And again, to that point of the the process. The 1% is how he explains in the book. It's like compound interest. You don't lose the 1% that you had done the previous days. You're doing the 1% on top of the other percentage, the 1% that you did the previous days. So that way, at the end of a period, you will have the compound interest of those 1% that you did every day. And that's where you will have the output or the gains that you were striving for. And I think he starts the book off like right off the bat with that concept. And I just found that fascinating because, that's the same way compound interest works, especially if you have a 401k or if you have some sort of investment and you're adding on top of what you've already added and you're gaining interest off your cumulative amount, and then it just compounds itself on itself, and then you reap gains down the road. But you have to be patient. You have to go through the process because you're doing this for the long term. You're doing it for the marathon. You're not doing it for the sprint. So yeah, again, jamesclear.com. The book is Atomic Habits, and that was the key too. These 1% increments, we think they're not a lot, but when they compound over time, they generate remarkable results, huge gains. So if you can just do the 1% each day, you're going to succeed. You're gonna have remarkable results that you envision at the end of your journey. The second resource that I wanted to highlight was, and some of you may already know this as writers, is the book Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. And this book has been a bestseller for 15 years, and used by screenwriters around the world. This book is considered the de facto book for screenwriting. And I mean, the title, in its title, it says the last book on screenwriting that you'll ever need. And what I really like about this book, again, it's the same thing where it's very concise. But there's, when I read these books for the first time, it just everything made sense. It was like oh yeah, that seems common sense. But you either forget about it or you get lost in the minutia of either what you're doing, or as me, I don't have enough experience writing, so I don't think I have been in my own process long enough to understand, okay, these are the fundamentals. It's this thing where I think I'm still learning the fundamentals, but I think it's more of like I'm translating the fundamentals into my own daily practice. And I think they haven't. It's that thing with well, acting. Acting was a big thing where if you don't physicalize the action, meaning if you don't get it into your body, or you don't make that connection between the intellectual mind of I understand this script, but make the connection between what is my action, what is my intention, and then tying that into a physical action, into physicality, that allows your performance to spring off the stage, off the screen, off the page, because you are now driving energy into your performance, into your action, into your intention, and that enlivens anyone who's watching your performance. And I feel it's the same. It's the same with the writing process. Is I haven't instilled these principles and then given these principles action, but energy. Use these principles on a daily practice and process every day to give them momentum. And then once that gets into your body, it's that whole thing about riding the bike, or if you were a skater, or any sort of thing with muscle memory. Your muscles have been imprinted with that movement, so it's almost like they automatically go, and they're trained to engage in the activity that you are doing. But then not only that, but n- they've been engaged to train the right way, so that way they enact in the right way to excel in whatever performance that they're trying to do. Um, so that's what I really liked about this book as well. Is it's the same thing, he breaks down these ironclad rules to make your script more marketable, but just more satisfying. And they're very simple elements and secrets and tips, and just it's just very fascinating. It just made a lot of sense to me when I read it. So I'm rereading that because, again, just trying to remind myself of some of these principles and these fundamentals that can engage into my process. And because I don't know, especially to I've slowly been finding things that I really enjoy about writing, but then also two things that I enjoy about how I want my process to be. Like I talked about earlier, some people can just they live and die by an outline. Some people can not do an outline. Some people can write the ending first and then go backwards. Some people need to start with like beats. They need to know, you know, Where's my inciting action? Where's my resolution? They have to plan that out first, and then they can start constructing the story. I've noticed with me, initially, a lot of it has just been imagery. I'll see a scene, and I just have to note down this, like, the scene, or what is this person doing? How does this person look? Or there's an interaction with these two people. Um, so that's kind of I've been enjoying that part of it, but then you know trying to build a little bit more structure. Maybe I'm trying to utilize maybe a more of a formal structure first, and then it's the whole thing. Once you learn the rules, then you can break them. Um, so I don't think I found my process yet fully, and I think that's what's been also interesting and cool is exploring that and trying to find the things that I like. Right now I've been doing bits and pieces. I feel like I try to just allow myself to to gravitate to what I find interesting in the moment and work with that. So like if like I've been working with the script and I'll look at the screenplay and say, maybe I'll just pick off exactly where I left off. Or I might have had an idea about a scene that I was writing and then I might go back to it. It's kind of might be like a borderline rewriting. And I know there's elements that a lot of times you should just get out the first draft and then you can always rewrite later. But I'm trying to find my way still of at least, because it really comes down to this. I'm trying to find elements of things that will just help me just keep showing up. I think that that's been a goal that I've started to focus in on this year, especially, is just being more consistent and showing up. Like if I can just get over that, then I feel like a lot of the other details I can work through and learn. But if I'm not showing up, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter if I do an outline or I don't do an outline, or if I do a first draft or I don't do a first draft. If I'm not showing up every day, then it doesn't matter. I have to be consistent. And that's a part of the reason, again, why I'm rereading these two books especially, is that way I could try to use those fundamentals to help myself be more consistent. Um, so I'll put that one in as well. It's savethecat.com by Blake Snyder. Again, I'll put these in the show notes. For any of those that are thinking about writing, that are doing writing, and that are struggling, it's okay. I think it's fine. It's normal. It even happens with the best. I remember with the master class, Aaron Sorkin talked a lot about literally days where he would be sitting there and nothing, nothing is on the page, but he's trying to figure it out, racking the brain, and it's okay. And also too, he it was really cool with that class too. Is he had a mock writers room, and they essentially broke down a script for a show and how a writer's room works. And it was really cool because you would think, oh, see, these writers, you know, they're just at the computer or at the typewriter back in the day, and they're just, banging out pages after pages, and then they're just reading the pages and like, oh, we got to make this change. It's not like that. A lot of times, the room, you're just sitting there spouting off ideas, writing on a whiteboard, ideas, trying to make connections. You'll break for lunch. You'll come back. You might write a page. You might not write any pages. You might write a few more pages, and that's it. It's not this thing where you sit at the computer and you're gonna bang out, a full novel in a weekend. Now, there are some people who they do long stretches of writing. It's not to say that you can't. It's not to say that you won't. But everyone has their process. Shonda Rhimes also has a master class, and she talked about, it take for her process. She had to take a long time to build everything out But when she built it out, she sat down and wrote out the whole thing. But the build out might have taken her a year. Might have taken her a year to do those first couple of episodes or that season. She had to still go through the process of putting it all together. And then the physical writing, she could probably write it out very quickly. Um, but again, no shortcut for the work. Find your process and don't feel bad about struggling. Um, I'm definitely struggling, and people far more successful than I have far more successful than I am still struggle, and they've won awards. They're they have published books, they have published works, they have television shows, they have movies, and it's still going to be a grind. But embrace the grind, and because if you do the grind, that 1% is going to build and build and build and build, and you're going to have something that you're going to be really proud of. But also too, you're just going to feel proud that you've completed something. At least that's my goal. That's my hope. I'm actually really excited after where this journey is going to take me. So I appreciate you joining me today. Thank you for listening. Um, I hope to be more consistent too with the episodes. Hope you've enjoyed them thus far. Please rate, subscribe, review, and then visit us too. We've got a lot of other great podcasts with the group. Ruminationsradionetwork.com. I've been listening to some of the podcasts that the team has been making. They've been fantastic. A lot of great stuff. We got philosophy. We've got music. We've got games. We've got film, television. It's a great team. They're putting out great content. So head over to ruminationsradionetwork.com. Uh, Give a listen. Again, thank you for listening to Ruminations on Tony's Tall Tales. Please subscribe. Please rate, review, and we'll see you on the next episode. Good luck writing.